What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? Welcome to today's video. Back on the 4-rotor RX7, we've got Calvin here, master body technician and soon-to-be professional rally co-driver, helping us take the front end off of this FD RX7. So, in the last video, we got the 4-rotor set in there. It's too high. It's going to stick out of the hood. So Master Calvin's going to cut some really good holes in the hood. Just kidding. Master Calvin's going to take all the fenders off, and I got a new subframe to try. So I want to thank my buddy Kelly down in Evansville. He bought this for his LS swapped RX7. Now he already has this subframe in his car, but the thing that happens whenever you're just kind of a collector of weird and obscure cars and rare car parts, when parts come up for sale that they don't make new anymore, you just snag them. So I appreciate him letting me borrow this subframe to put it in this car to see if it's going to work. But this is a Sandberg LS swap subframe for an RX-7 FD. So you can see the LS mounts right here. The rack on this subframe is about an inch lower than stock. So they make little spacers and adapters to be able to raise the rack back up. Yes, lowering the rack is going to affect the steering geometry, but lowering it this much is not uncommon in the world of FDs. So we're going to start there. Like we said at the very beginning, the goal for this car is a street car to drive to Cars and Coffee, make 4-rotor noises. We're not trying to build a Le Mans 787B FD RX7. Okay, this thing is about comfort. So if there's a little bit of bump steer because we moved the rack, it's not that big of a deal. It's not going to cost us lap times or put us in the wall or anything. So, Calvin's going to get at doing this. Have you ever taken apart the front of an RX-7 before?
Nope. Sure haven't.
Are you excited to?
It's the first time for everything. I don't know if I'm excited yet or not. We'll see how it's held on.
Yeah. So this is a plastic bumper. I saw it still has the 93 like bumper support in there. It's kind of just chilling behind the 99 spec bumper. Feed. I don't think these are carbon. I think they're fiberglass fenders. And then ultimately the plastic head covers. So I'm surprised, honestly, that this thing made it all the way here with those still on. They tend to like to just yeet themselves off the top of the car. So I believe that probably front lip first, bumper / headlight covers next. I can hook the battery up so we can pop those up if you need to. We'll get all this off. We're probably going to have to take off the side splitters as well to get the fenders off. The car is going to get the engine bay painted, which is why we're taking all of this out anyways, but also just while we're working around it. Nice to not tear stuff up.
Less scratches is less work for me.
Yep. So, Calvin's going to get to work on this, and I'm in the midst of another video working on the rally car. I mean, if you want to come and look at it.
Yeah.
There we go. We'll make it all cinematic.
It's not going to come unplugged.
Oh yeah, it'll come. Get it unplugged and then plug it back in, but don't clip it. Okay, now just stick it back on there.
Bird test?
A little bit of dirt in there. So we got the stock rack out of the car now. We're looking at the Sandberg rack, and I want to show you guys a few little comparisons between the two to show you just how much we're moving the rack out of the way. So this is my handy dandy, perfectly straight edge here, laying across, sitting on the frame to subframe mount on the left side. So I'm going to go ahead and just measure down from that to where the rack bolts, and I get right at 3 inches there to the bottom of that straight edge as it would sit from the bottom of the frame. Moving over to the V8 subframe, we can see now to the rack 4 1/4 inches. So with the new subframe, just bolting the rack to that subframe, we'll gain a whole inch of clearance for the engine to be able to come down an inch more than where it is right now. Taking a look up under the car, you can see why putting V8s and RX7s is super common, because there is a ton of space in here. Even with the length of the 4-rotor, there's still plenty of room to the front of the crossmember here. Now there would have been something that bolted in from here to here, but just unbolting that stock transmission location, it all comes forward. And for those guys that are wondering if you can just swap the subframe without dropping the suspension, yes, just pull the back bolts out, prop the subframe out. You kind of got to finagle things around the subframe as it drops, but it should come right out. And if you didn't have a 4-rotor and you just had a 2-rotor, you could have taken the rack off and then taken the subframe out, and you could have even left the rack in here if you really wanted to. The 4-rotor pan with this little sump up here on the front, I couldn't have got the rack off because it was up in that hole. All right, y'all, the moment of truth. So when I picked the engine up, I barely lifted it off of its weight. So it's probably only 1/4 of an inch higher than what it was before I swapped the subframe with clearance to the rack. So here you can see we've got a ton of clearance. The oil pan is gonna hit this rack, or hit this subframe. Gee willikers, look at that, right there. Dang it. I was hoping that this thing would just fit, but it's not looking like it's gonna be that easy. You're telling me all this work switching these subframes around, and the oil pan, the ramp, is gonna hit that bar. I was thinking when I built engine mounts back here, I would add another bar to connect the back of this subframe together. I was all hyped up to lower this engine, and now it's not one thing, it's another. Anyways, let's see how far down it goes. I think it's gonna hit that pan. Looking across right here, you can definitely see that that alternator bracket is below the fender now. So we've got plenty of room on a different thermostat housing right here, and this would definitely clear. So this subframe, definitely the move. Honestly, this oil pan modification is really not that big of a deal. You know, this sump was really kind of just built around the stock oil pan, like using that. But, you know, this subframe, this bar sticks back a little bit. We've got, I mean, there's miles of clearance to clear the rack. I think this is definitely the solution. For the sake of replacement parts, okay, I'm gonna modify this subframe to have the engine mounts to hold the 4-rotor. You know, we're gonna be doing subframe modifications anyways. Maybe I just talked myself into doing subframe modifications instead of modifying the oil pan, but either way, this definitely gets us where we need to be as far as the height of the engine. So you can definitely tell we're sitting a lot lower. I'm gonna pop this thermostat housing off, and then I'll set the hood on there, and we'll see if the hood clears everything. Woo! Look at all that clearance, Clarence. Looks like power steering pump. We've got plenty of room. Now the hood isn't like... Okay. Now the hood is latched. Looks like I've got about a 1/2 inch over there on the water pump housing. How much clearance is that, guys? Plenty? The hood closes. Heck yeah. This is sick. Okay. So it's looking like a side mount alternator in the air pump location right here is gonna work. We're gonna be able to use the mechanical water pump, which is sick. So we'll have, you know, a regular serpentine belt pulley on there that runs the left side, the second pulley that runs the power steering and the air conditioning. We chop that bracket off and the air conditioning compressor fits. It's looking like we're gonna have a 4-rotor street car. So it isn't bolted down in the back. The hood probably needs to go down just a little bit in the back. Once it's mounted to the hinges, it gets sucked down a little bit. But we are mounted in the front, and we've got the clearance that we need. So fire me up. Now, moving forward, I've got to modify that subframe a bit. My goal is to lower the engine maybe just a tick, like a 1/4 inch more. I'll notch that subframe out, replate it in, build new engine mounts across the back. We'll link the subframe from side to side, much like the stock one is linked from passenger to driver side. Just like a nice brace. I've got a brace on the RX7 between the compression arms at the back of the control arm as well, so we'll add that brace. Then the engine will be mounted, and that's going to be a huge relief, assuming that the intake manifold fits as well. So the engine is down pretty low from the hood. It looks like it's all going to fit. I'm really hoping the intake manifold fits. It's a wraparound style ITB, really nice looking piece with like a billet flange and all of that stuff. So we'll get to go picking that up here in a couple weeks. We'll get that on the car, and then from there it's it's smooth sailing, guys. So once I get the engine mounts built on this thing, get the subframe looking proper and the engine mounted proper, then we'll be ready to, like, you know, intake manifold, wiring harness, build a radiator support, and this thing's like hooked the exhaust up and it's pretty much ready to fire up. Pretty stoked though. Got to use a V8 subframe to put a 4-rotor in your FD. Learn something new every day. And really, you know, you don't have to. It's just going to be the easiest way. Easiest. Less work. Less choppy chop. Less figuring out where the rack and pinion goes. And even now I can move the rack up just a smidge and we'll be properly fitting this 4-rotor in the FD with the stock transmission and like street car status. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm stoked to always be making progress, just picking away at little things on the cars. Been working on the rally car, getting ready for snowdrift. Definitely would love for you guys to subscribe to the channel, check it out. Follow along with this build, it's going to happen pretty quick. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Keep it rad. You ever think, like, as a kid, you're building model cars. It's like I mentioned earlier, with all the pieces mounted on the wall. Looks like one of those things where the model car pieces come apart. And then your model cars in life just turn into real cars. Putting this stuff together. It's always been a little bit surreal being in this garage. Kind of still only been moved in for like a month and a half or so, 2 months. And just having all my stuff in one place, I'm stoked. Crazy spread of cars here. Rally car, the RX7, the RX8, a 4-rotor. It's so weird to think that a 4-rotor 5-10 years ago, I would have been off the rails stoked, super crazy for 4-rotor stuff. Like, they're so awesome. There's not very many of them, and now there's like, I'm building one. It's so cool. I'm so stoked. It's cold. Time to go home.